check, mic check. How we feeling tonight? Hey, I'm trying to get this countdown to count a little longer. I'm trying to get this countdown to count a little longer, but all right. Check, 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 mic check. My brother Mo Boxing in the building. Wagwan Brethren, salute. Yashan Benjamin, salute. All right. So, today, or tonight rather, well, it is Shabbat, so I'm not going to do this one too long. I'm going to wrap this one up soon. But in honor of the Maroon Festival coming up this next Thursday, from a Kampong, I will be going. I'll be flying out to Jamaica to be at the festival. And with any luck, hopefully meet the chief. If he's got time, I'd like to do some boxing with him, maybe hold some mitts for him or whatnot, and definitely do some work with the kids. If anyone's brave enough, shit, I'll do a little bit of exhibition work if anyone wants to spar. Or I can I'm definitely going to be doing a little bit of training myself while I'm there. I'm going to take advantage of the mountain air. I am starting a camp, another training camp. This is my third training camp, and admittedly, I should have had like 4 to 6 training camps last year, but I should be on my 4th training camp, but I took some time off. I want to stay injury free, and I've been taking it easy as far as training goes, but I'm back on it. So for this new camp, this is the one where I can say after this camp I can fight. I can get ready for a fight. I can accept a fight. I know people like these 12-week camps and whatnot. I personally like 7-week camps. I think once you're in shape, you shouldn't need more than like a 7-week camp to prepare, or at least I think that. Maybe even 9, 10, 11. Yeah, I could see where 12. I could see where you would get a 12-week camp from, right? Like a 12-week camp would be like you would do three weeks of straight training and then a week off, and then another 3 weeks of straight training and then a week off, and then another 3 weeks of training. So it's really like 9. It's a 9-week camp with 3 weeks of resting. So it comes out to a 12-week camp. Yeah, I could see that. That's pretty good. That's actually pretty good. I might start making my camps 9 weeks. But I just feel that long camps it's like a lot of wear and tear on the body, you know? But if you periodize it and you take like a week of rest, a week where it's just really stretching, foam rolling, really working out the knots, it's like a massage week and stuff. Tab Investments, long time no see, salute. Managuana Yad, brethren. If you're just joining us next week, I'll be doing a live stream from Jamaica, doing my training camp, doing some runs in the mountains, teaching the kids how to box, talking to some Maroons, see if I can learn some stories I haven't heard of yet. And hopefully I can build a gym. I ordered some boxing equipment, and it's on its way, but I've just been fucking up. I've just been messing up because, like, I forgot to put the apartment number and whatnot, so on Monday, if I can't get this by Monday, then I don't know. I'm either going to have to, like, run to the store and buy some stuff that I can just take with me, or I don't know. But if y'all want to donate equipment or freaking whatchamacallit, or support that in any way, y'all can hit me up in the Cash App or cop yourself a focus ball at thefocusballs.com. Get yourself a focus ball. All those proceeds will be going to um, whatchamacallit, pretty much the building that boxing gym. So, as a Maroon from the line of King Kojo, I feel I am. I've always, I guess, felt duty bound to fight for my people, to represent my people in a martial arts capacity. But given that it's not, it's where whatchamacallit, given that it's where we don't fight wars anymore, I feel that the Maroon warrior legacy can be best represented, or the warrior spirit can be expressed in the ring, you know, in the combat sports arena. I feel that martial arts, self defense, like the story of the Maroons, is the story of successful black martial arts. You know, it's literally black martial artists who use their martial arts skills to defeat other people. And as you will see when I tell the story of King Kojo, you will see that this was martial arts at its finest in terms of strategy, applicate everything. You get me? He was indeed a martial artist. He was definitely a warrior. Um, and I think that he would be a UFC champion if he was around. He'd be a boxing champion if he was around today. Um, Certainly my belief, right? So I'm going to get into the story in just a moment of King Kojo. Okay, so I'll keep my ass put there. In 1 second. Coward Nello in the building, salute. So I'll get into our story in just a moment. I'm just rolling an L, and then we can tell the story, right? But just to preface everything, King Kojo is essentially the epitome of black martial arts and using martial arts for. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to say. The Maroons, you hear about ninjas and stuff like that, ninjas and samurais and whatnot, bro. I wish that the Maroons had the same popularity that ninjas do, because ninjas apparently weren't real. Go through YouTube and you'll find all these Japanese scholars and whatnot. They'll be like, "Oh, the shinobi, the ninja, no, they were just regular." It was exaggerated. It's more of a Hollywood creation. The ninja phenomenon was a Hollywood creation. But the truth of the matter is, black people were the first real ninjas. Like the stuff that ninjas are reported to have done, the Maroons actually did that. They were actual stealth warriors. They were so good at stealth, and this is why I wish I had my computer. They were so good at stealth warfare that, I might be able to just pull up a picture. Yeah, I can pull up a picture. Yeah, hold on. They were so good at stealth warfare that, um, no, add a video clip, add background. Okay, I got to upgrade. Hold on. Oh, you dicks. All right, they won't. Come on. I'm not gonna upgrade right now. I mean, I can, but Shabbat, I'm not doing that. Banner. Hmm. Damn it. Post a comment. Why won't they let me? They're not gonna let me bring up something here. Like, I guess I can't do a screen share from here. Fuck. Hmm. Hold on 1 second. If I could pull up my laptop, then sure. Check, check, check. Hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to get a picture for y'all or some videos and whatnot. And they're not. They just not letting me do it. Broadcast info. Mm. All right, 1 second. I'm gonna. I'm trying to figure out how to change this image. 1 second, guys. All right, fuck it. That's a no go. All right, whatever. I guess we'll just have to use our freaking imaginations, right? Um, damn it, man. I really wanted to give you guys some pictures. No, I can get something. All right. So there we go. So you see, check out my avatar real quick. You see how this guy is dressed like a tree? Maroons were famous for this. This is the invention of camouflage. So that's why the homie wanted me to bring camo. So this is a Maroon tradition. Every year we actually do this. Well, not we, because I ain't never done this. This will be my first festival, and I'll get to sit under the tree where my forefather told the British, "Hold my whole beef." Well, maybe not by those words, but you know what I mean. Where the British were forced to surrender to my forefather, and like the complete cucks that they are, they wrote some other shit in history. But whatever the where did my time go? Why did that just happen? Okay, there we go. All right. So, a little more foreplay before we jump into the story, right? The whole concept of camouflage comes from this right here. The army fatigue, the camo, all of that comes from right here. It was from the British and Americans fighting Maroons, Africans, Camouflage is a French word, is my understanding, but it actually, I think it came originally from an African word. It was like a French size word, and it was this thing right here. It was these wars. So Maroons were definitely um real ninjas. They were real ninjas, real life ninjas. You get me? They would, what ninjas are purported to do, hide out in what you call it, um surprise their enemies. There's stories of the British saying that the trees came to life and killed them. They were talking about this. Dudes would walk into a Maroon ambush, like they would have trees following them for miles, not realizing that their freaking retreat's been cut off by walking trees. You get me? And there's a lot of magical stuff that happened among the Maroons, that you could say are like ninja-esque. All right. So as I light this L, mm, let me tell you the story about King Kojo Rowe, one of the greatest Maroon chiefs and forefathers of freedom in Jamaica. Right? Now, forget what you've heard. Forget what you've heard and forget what you've read. There's a lot of stories. Play his ball. Peace. Salute to you, fam. Appreciate you stopping by. Smash that like button. So, let me tell you about King Kojo. King Kojo. I want to share this with someone real quick. How do I invite people? Check, 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 check. All right. A lot of the Jamaicans in Canada are descended from Kojo. But yeah, so King Kojo, Kojo Rowe, Kojo Rowe, Kojo Rowe, contrary to popular belief, he was born in Jamaica. He was born in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica. He was the firstborn son of Prince Nakwan. Now, if you follow my channel, you'll know that Prince Nakwan had come to Jamaica from southern Ghana, West Africa. And Prince Nakwan, he was a Fanti prince, and he had some Spaniard comrades that he traded with for a number of years, and they tricked him into coming to Jamaica with a bunch of his men, his damn it, they tricked him into coming to Jamaica with a bunch of his soldiers, and essentially, let me change my essentially when he came to Jamaica, when he came on board the ship, him and his people were sold into slavery, to to Jamaica, and it was during the Spanish reign of Jamaica. Right, it was when the Spaniards ruled Jamaica at the time, and about 5 days into slavery, 5 days into slavery, Prince Nakwan found an escape, and Prince Nakwan led his 600 soldiers in a rebellion against the Spaniards and beat them and fled to the mountains. Now, when Nakwan came to the mountains, he found that the mountains in the interior were occupied the natives, by the natives of Jamaica, as well as some of the what is it called? Some of the some blacks from Spain and Portugal, and some from West Africa, who had previously came with Christopher Columbus. Black Jews specifically, referred to as Maranos, right? Maranos, such as like Joseph Ben Levi, also known as Louis de Torres, the translator of Christopher Columbus. When Columbus came to Jamaica in the 1400s, he went to war with the first time Maroons, as they were called. The first time Maroons were the original or pre-European inhabitants of Jamaica, um, and they didn't call it Jamaica. Yamai, the people were known as the Yama. Some call them the Yamazi, Yamazi, or Yamai. But either way, it's Ya, and it's an allusion, as Christopher Columbus would state in his book, one in some of his memoirs. He stated that the natives of Jamaica and the natives of Hispaniola, Puerto Rico, and Haiti spoke a corrupted form of Hebrew. He said they spoke a language that was adjacent to Hebraico corrompido, right? Adjacento Hebraico corrompido. That's what I read. Now, in his notes, so the natives of Jamaica spoke a corrupted form of Hebrew, and they called it Yamai or Yamazi, Jamaica, Jamaica, Jamaica. And if they're Hebrew, which they were, then it's more than likely they were the descendants of the 10 tribes that came from Afro-Asia. They were taken to Babylon. They were taken into slavery to Babylon, and they, well, they were taken to this is when the what are they called? Some forgot the dude's name. He was a fuck. What is his name? Sem had two sons. Damn it! What the? I just remembered their names. Sumerians? No, it's not the Sumerians. Damn it! Why am I forgetting their name? Oh, Assyrians. Ashur Banipal. There we go. Ashur. The children of Ashur, the Assyrians. So the Assyrians had conquered Babylon, and Assyria was first under Babylon's control, and then Assyrio-Babylonia, whatever. The Assyrians rose up and conquered Babylon, and it was Assyrio-Babylonia, whatever. They eventually took the 10 tribes of Israel, the 10 holy people, 10 of the 12 holy people, into slavery to Assyria, and eventually they ran away and went to a new land where fore no man had dwelt, which has long been speculated to be the Americas. Christopher Columbus conclusively proves this because, according to his records, they spoke freaking Hebrew. And according to the archaeology, there's 800 Hebrew stones found among the natives of Puerto Rico. So it at least verifies what he says about Puerto Rico. But the name Jamaica would allude to Yah and what you call it. That's what they call their god. So this is why the natives, when they resisted Christianity and they fled to the interior, they were referred to as Maranos, because Maranos was a term for, it was an insult for Hebrews, right? It was calling them swines or pigs, or and it became Cimarron. and cimarron meant wild pig or escaped cattle, right? Because if you didn't submit to Christianity, if you didn't convert from believing in the God of the Hebrews, the God of the Jews, then they would send you into slavery. Um, but the ones who escaped, or the ones who practiced it under their nose, were referred to as marranos, and the ones who escaped, um, when the marranos escaped, they called them cimaranos, and that is the origin of the word maroon. So the first time Maroons were the natives, who were definitely of Hebrew origin, and they fought back against Columbus. And Columbus had brought blacks with him. But here's the thing: those blacks actually showed Columbus how to get to Jamaica. In fact, one of those blacks, two, the sailors, the pilots, the captain of Columbus's ships, the Nino brothers, they were black, and they were from southern Ghana. They were from southern Ghana, Elmina to be exact, a town not too far from where Kojo comes. Right now, it was well understood that the Nino brothers were of Hebrew descent, and if they practiced their Hebrew faith in secret, they would have been referred to as Maranos. Now, it's where um, Christopher Columbus also brought with him um, blacks from Spain and Portugal. Then you had a wave of black people who came to the islands, to the Americas, long before the West, long before the Europeans. And essentially, when Columbus arrived, it was sort of the European takeover. And remember, this was at the end of what was known as this was at the start of what was known as or the fulfillment of what was known as the Reconquista, which was the taking back of Europe from black people by white people, right? And kicking out the black Muslims and black Jews, who were collectively known as Moors. But the Moors who practice Islam secretly were known as Moriscos. But the Moors who were of Hebrew origin, who were Jews, they were referred to as Marranos. And in order to not be persecuted and enslaved, they actually came to Jamaica and the West long before Christopher Columbus. That is why Christopher Columbus had turned to Marranos, secret Jews, black Jews, to escort him to America, such as Luis de Torres, who quickly, as soon as Luis de Torres landed, I think it might have been in Hispaniola, Luis de Torres became a Maroon. He was like, "Yeah, I'm out. I'm not practicing Christianity," and he was telling all the natives, "No, no, no, dude, don't practice that shit. You're you are what you call it. You're Hebrews, right?" So he would have been a Marano or a Maroon. So the ones in Jamaica fought back, and um, they basically took the interior of the island, took the mountains. My brother DP Rock in the building, salute. So they were in, and they kind of remained low for a little bit. I think they had two showdowns with Christopher Columbus. One the first time he came, and then 3 years later. But there would be subsequent um, African slaves and even Portuguese, black Hebrews of Portuguese and Spanish descent, who were taken to Jamaica for slavery. What you call it? And the reason they were taken there, for people who question that, is because they were being kicked out of Spain. They were enslaved in Spain. You get me? They were already enslaved in Spain and Portugal. Um, and at the time, the Spaniards and Portuguese were traveling along the African coast and making lots of deals with West African kings. Right now, the thing of it is, West Africa was known as the cemetery of the white man's grave, because of malaria. Um, During like I want to say like 14, maybe even earlier than that, 1400s or so, like a lot of white people would go to West Africa. It was like the new world to explore, but they were dying. They were dying of malaria left, right, and center. You know, so the Portuguese and the Spaniards couldn't colonize West Africa the way they wanted to. So they took the black Portuguese, which they were Jews. That's where they came from. They were descendants of the Jews who were sold into slavery to Babylon, and then Babylon sold them to Spain and Portugal. And they existed there for like 500-600 years. Some of them helped the Moors take over Spain. Some of them fought back against the Moors when the Moors were invading Spain. Right? Now, some of them would start European like families and whatnot, like ruling families. But that's a story for another day. We'll get into. I'm just trying to give you the background of what Kojo was born into. So the Spaniards at the time and the Portuguese were along the West African coast, and they took in the 14 and 1500s. What they did was when they found Marranos, when they found people, black people practicing, basically being Jews, knowing that they're Jews, practicing the Sabbath and all that, they would sell them, they would make them slaves, and they would sell them to West Africa. To West Africa. Because they needed workers over there. They had new territory found in West Africa. In fact, in 1720, the Portuguese crowned there were certain places in West Africa that were Portuguese crowns. Not necessarily that the Portuguese went in there and conquered it, but the Portuguese sent the people over there to settle it, and they put one of these niggas as a king over it. One of those places is known as the Kingdom of Judah, West Africa. It was actually settled by the Portuguese. The Portuguese created it. But the Portuguese had sent the Jews that they kicked out over there. They were like, fuck it, we don't want you here. Go over there and work over there and send us back the goods. That's what they did. But when they found that they were still over there practicing their faith, they cracked down on them. They went over there and they told the Africans, yo, if these dudes are still doing that, snuff them out. And that was in the 1500s. The hunt for Marranos in West Africa. You can look that up. So I don't remember it might have been Joao or one of those kings, Portuguese king, went to sniff out Marrano activity in this territories that were in West Africa. So he went over there, and pretty much, if you were in a West African territory, now again, a lot of West African countries were created by the Portuguese, who settled it along the coast. For example, you'll find the name Da Costa. In fact, I was trained. My boxing coach was Da Costa. You'll find that Da Costa, Acosta, that's a West African name. Acosta, doesn't that sound Spanish? It's a Afro-Portuguese name. Because I remember when I met him, and I thought about his name. I'm like, he's West African. He clearly looks black. He's not Spanish at all. Acosta. It just means from the coast, the Guinean coast, the coast of Guinea. Yeah, well, the coast of Guinea, a lot of it was settled by black Jews from Portugal. Da Costa is a Jewish name. It's a Spanish Jew name. It's a Portuguese Jew name. And a lot of them went to Africa. Da Costa, of the coast. In fact, there were Marrano families named Da Costa. Da Costa, right? So, yeah, there's a lot of prominent black Jew families who were sent to Africa on the coast to be servants of sorts, to clean up and ship goods to the Portuguese. And when they found that they were practicing their faith, they went over there and they sold them into slavery. Like, all right, cool, you going further? A lot of them went to Brazil, right? Now, a lot of them, you had some who were shipped to Jamaica. OG Eric Salute family says, happy holidays. Same to you, King. So a lot of them that were shipped to Jamaica. So just to give you context, there's different waves of people that were in Jamaica. There was the natives who came there from biblical origins, according to Columbus, according to them, and according to, the stones that were discovered. There were West Africans who were coming there regularly on their of their own merit, the Moors, so to speak, even North Africans. Then you had um, then you had the the Spanish and Portuguese Jews who fled persecution and first came there, and then the group who escorted Christopher Columbus, who then the Europeans brought with them Spanish and Portuguese and West African blacks as slaves after the fact, right? So there were some who came of their own, a wave, hundreds of years, some who came by slavery, and yeah, and the native people. But the ones who were of the Hebrew faith and or excuse me, not even faith, of Hebrew blood, they would be referred to as Marano. And the word Marano evolved into Cimarron and Maroon, Maroon, and it's Maroon nowadays, right? So that was the first time Maroons, then like a second wave of Maroons in the 1500s. The 1600s is when um, King Kojo of the Maroons appears on the scene. Before I do that, let me take another. One second, yeah. Check, check, check. All right, we're still up in here. Let me light this. Yeah, buddy. We're about to get into the action-packed stuff in a second. This story gets real interesting. All right. So, kind of shout out General real quick because every time he's about to light an L, or at least back in the day, he would say, "What the hell did he say?" Excuse me while I light my spliff. That's a song, actually. Anyway, yes, sir. Back to the story. So, King Kojo was born onto Prince Nakwan, or King Nakwan, when Nakwan escaped slavery from the Spanish, who had tricked him to coming to Jamaica. Um, he had escaped to the mountains, to the Blue Mountains specifically. And when he had escaped to the Blue Mountains, he encountered the original Maroons, which consisted of first the native Maroons, which were the ones that came via the biblical route, as I told you, the 10 tribes, but they were in small number. DNA test proves that they are there. They still exist in modern Maroons. Um, but then there were the Spanish and Portuguese blacks who were brought like in the late 1400s, late in the 1500s, um, and obviously some recent their descendants and recent people, whatnot. Now, Prince Nakwan and his 600 Fantiman, or Coromantee, as they're like recorded in history, um, which was Coromantee is like, it's a long story behind Coromantee, but it's Comansi and it was a man's name. It was a sentence. It meant this nigga didn't listen. But the Coromantee, which that's the language that like a lot of older Maroons, they still speak Coromantee. But Coromantee sounds a lot like Chi, which is Ghanaian. It's West African. So you still have Jamaicans who speak it like thorough. Older Maroons, they speak it thoroughly. Then they speak a half-breed language with that in English, which is known as Old Patois. Old Patois. Let me show you Old Patois. That's Old Patois. Kojo Pikibo. See, in like modern Patois, we say picnic. Awufa picnic that. Whose children are those? Whose children? Whose child is that? Right? Awufa picnic that. So picnic means like children, kids. But the old terminology, like in Kojo's time, was pikibo, which is more like related to the West African terminology. Whatever the case, Nakwan would soon become, I guess you could say, the de facto head of all the Maroons, because, or at least in the Blue Mountains, because he accounted for 600. He brought 600 people with him, and I think at the time there might have been. I don't want to guess, but from what I've understood, the 600 Coromantee became a large makeup of the Maroons, right? And they would live up in the mountains for about 200 years, relatively undisturbed, while Jamaica was changing hands between the British and the Spanish. Now, Kojo was born right at this time. The Maroons of the Blue Mountains would, for the most part, subsist on um, hunting, um, growing ganja, growing whatever it is they grew and subsisted on. But they were able to live in the mountains for the most part free, and not have to fight too much, is my understanding. But around Cudjo's, I mean, they would have like scrapes with the Spaniards and whatnot. They would also perform raids on some of the plantations. Um, when Cudjo was born, it was the beginning of the war with the Spaniards and the British. So while this picture says the Great Kojo, 1680 to 1644 to 1744, that's actually incorrect. Kojo had to be born after 1941, but definitely before, he was at least a young man capable of commanding a military force to lead a plantation rebellion by 1690. So we'd estimate that he had to be at least 20 years old by 1690. So let's say he was 20 years old by 1690, then he would have been by 90, that's 70. But his father was 18 in 1641. No, 19, so 1642, he was 20. So 1615, 1642, 52, he would have been 30. So Kojo could have been born as early as 52, let's say 50s, 1650, 1660, no later than 1670. No later. Absolutely no later than 1670. I would say more like 1665, 1660-ish, right? Because that would have been around the time where Nakwan had time to settle down after the wars and the defeat of the Spaniards. But nonetheless, Kojo, interestingly enough, would walk across, he and his father would walk across, um, one side of the island to the other. Yeah, barefooted. He would walk from one side of Jamaica to the other as a kid. Now, as a kid, my mom and I would drive from one side of Jamaica. Sometimes take the bus. Like, yeah, drive when we could, take the bus when we had to. But we trek from one side of Jamaica to the other. And we make this trip every year. Inside, I feel like it's symbolic, like it's almost a rite. But the purpose of him walking from one side of Jamaica to the other was strategic. This is how he would become the great strategist that he is, because he knew the terrain. But he and his father would walk that trip back and forth from the Blue Mountains all the way to the other side. Even the great nanny of the Maroons, Queen Nanny of the Maroons, made that trip. Now, so Kojo was born January 6th, possibly 1665, I want to say. Right? Maybe even 1650, but whatever. When the British were taking over the island, yeah, no. Okay, so the British officially conquered them in 1660. 1666 is when like the last battle ended. The last remnant of the Spaniards were kicked out in 1660. Right? So 1666. Kojo witnessed the first battles between the Spaniards and the British, which was in 1656. He was a kid back then. So Kojo was probably born 1650. Because it was said that Kojo said, "Me never know say Bakra fight Bakra," because he was used to he would travel from one side of the island with his father. So yeah, he could have been born even in the 40s. Kojo may have been born in the 1640s because he was traveling from one side of the island with his father as a kid, and on this travel is when he witnessed Bakra fight Bakra, and Bakra is what they call white people, right? Strangers, Bakra. So he, as a kid, he knew that the Bakra were trying to enslave the Maroons, and he just understood they're white, we're black, um, they're trying to enslave us, and we got to stay free. So, whatchamacallit, when they saw the ships coming, they're like, "Oh, Bakra sent for backup," and they realized the Bakra killed Bakra. Yeah. Now there were some Maroons who were brought by the Spaniards around this time, um, and you have to remember the word Maroon. The Spaniards were not calling them Maroons; they called them Marranos. And when they escaped, Cimarron, wild Marrano. Marrano is pig, calling a Jew a pig. So there were a lot of black Jews that were brought to Jamaica to be slaves, and they escaped, such as Juan de Bolis and Juan de Ceres. They were more than likely Portuguese. They were more than likely of Portuguese descent. De Bolis and de Ceres, yeah, I feel like this. Yeah, I feel like they're Portuguese. But when they came, they were no, they were Spaniards. They came with this, yeah, but the Spaniards may have bought them, but they could have came from Portugal. Whatever the case is, um, you'll find that a lot of Spanish Jews and a lot of Spanish Jews and Portuguese Jews would have the name Juan, Juan. But when you break down the name Juan, it's Ya, Ye, Ya, Ye, Yehuan, God's grace, or something like that, or God's glory. Yehuan, it's a Hebrew name. It's a Spanish version of a Hebrew name. It came from the descendants of Babylon, who were sold to Spain and lived there for roughly 1,000 years. And probably a little bit, actually probably a little over 1,000 years, but their Christianized name was with like names like Juan or Jose or Joao or things like that, or your Dennis, like Ugas, Jordan, your Dennis, your Dani. Your Dani is Jordan, and Jordan is it's Hebrew. Um, there's a bunch of other ones. Um, but yeah, so Kojo witnessed Bakra fight Bakra. So he witnessed the beginning of the Spanish. He was born at the time of the Spanish being conquered by the British. And the way the British defeated the Spanish in Jamaica was with the help of Caceres and Debolas. Caceres had originally served the Spanish, and he was kicking the British ass, and he got captured, and he turns on the Spanish, and then he rats out the Spanish, and there was like this battle where it was the Spaniards, not Spanish, the Spaniards fought. The Spaniards basically used the blacks to fight their battles in Jamaica, and after one battle where pretty much all majority of their blacks got killed, they all just threw their swords down and ran, and they like held up in some cave for a minute, and then they took like the last black people, and they were like, yeah, y'all stay here and fight, we're gonna get on this boat and we're going to Cuba. So they fled to Cuba, and the last black people were like, man, fuck them. And they snitched them. They didn't fight for them, they snitched them, and they sided with the British. This is not Kojo's people. When they say that the Maroons were siding with no, this is not Kojo's people. This is a separate group of Maroons. Kojo's Maroons are sitting there watching this the entire time, basically raiding in the middle of this, right? Performing raids and whatnot. So it's where after in 1666, you had Juan de Ceres, with the help of Juan de Ceres, and his Maroons, the Spaniards were officially pushed out. But de Ceres had a beef with. Oh no no no! Oh, I'm lying. Excuse me, Juan de Bolas. Juan de Bolas did that. My fault. There's a place in Jamaica called the De Bolas Mountains. It was named after him. The British named it after him. But he was a rat. That the Bolas is not a Maroon. He's a Marrano in that sense, and he did escape slavery. So you could say Cimarron or Maroon. You could say that, but he first he was allied with the Spanish. Then he jumped ship to the British, and then when after they cleaned up the Spanish, they came after what was then called the unsubdued banditis, and the unsubdued banditis were Kojo's people, the original Maroons, the original cluster of Maroons that go back to the 1400s and even further to the original encounter with Christopher Columbus, right? So that core Maroon group, the real true Maroons, we went to war with the Bolas, and de Ceres sided with us, is my understanding, or eventually de Ceres's Maroons. They went over to a mountain called Carmahali or something like that. But the Ceres's people killed the Bolas. But from Maroon stories, I understood that the Ceres either tried to kill Kojo, Nani, or Nakwan. But there was one of our ancestors that wouldn't have existed if the Bolas had his way, right? So now the Bolas gets murked. Now essentially, this is around 60s, the 1660s pushing 1670s. Now in the 70s, it was just like minor raids across the island. Now from a historical perspective, they see these raids as sporadic and unrelated. But from a Maroon perspective, we have the understanding that Kojo walked across the entire island. I can't stress this enough. And he consolidated Maroon power. There were various groups of people who, let's say, they were taken into slavery into the western side of the island, and they escaped slavery in the west. So they set up their own base camp and whatnot, and they fought back, and they're independent of the main cluster of the original Maroons. Eventually, those groups would have joined up with the main body of original Maroons, those smaller groups, because of Kojo, his network wide. Um, hold on, I gotta send a message real quick. Check. All right, we're still in here. Excuse me. So, with that in mind, where were we? Damn, I gotta roll up a fresh one already. Damn, that was too small. I gotta roll up something fatter. Y'all agree? Give me one if y'all agree. I gotta roll up something fatter than that. All right. So at this time, we recount that Kojo was a. Hold on a second. Yeah. So at this time, we recall that Kojo was going throughout the island, consolidating the power of the Maroons, because it was something his father taught him that in order for them to remain free, they have to know the entire island. It would be unlikely that in Kojo's trips across the island regularly that he would not have known about different Maroon groups and set up things with them. Now, there are a few um yeah, what the so yeah, some people try to refute the idea that it was like one unit, like they were not harmonious. I do believe that certain groups did not want to fall under Kojo's power, definitely. Authors make the grave error of separating the Windward Maroons and the lead. Suck my yo. Listen, I do not respect the concept or ideology of Leeward and Windward Maroons because Cudjoe and the original cluster of Blue Mountain Maroons spread out across East Jamaica into West Jamaica, and they essentially absorbed other Maroon groups. We know this because in order for when Cudjoe came to power, his rise to power was in 1690, right? Now, in 1690, we learned that Cudjoe um, led the greatest rebellion in Jamaica, which was the Sutton Plantation Rebellion. Um, from pretty much since the time they've been up in the mountains, they would come down and they would lead raids. Raids were done for a few things. It wasn't necessarily always altruistic, like we got to save those people. Um, a lot of the raids took place because of we want food and supplies and fuck you. So they would consistently raid, and the raids would pretty much have the side effect of freeing a lot of people, and a lot of those people would become Maroons. So they would become new soldiers, especially when they saw a ship of Coromantee. Like if you're watching and you're a Coromantee and you see, oh, they just brought in a group of Coromantee, now I'm gonna go fuck up your operation. So there was some altruism involved, but it wasn't like the only motive. There was definitely getting money in vagina, because that was one of the main things that Maroons went to plantations to hunt for, right? So, um, with that in mind, I account that the raids and rebellions that took place across the island, although they seem isolated, I attribute that to the hidden hand of the Maroon network, because it was well known before the government and the establishment, the recorded history understood what was going on. To record history, the Maroons and slaves had an intricate relationship in which you could find out what was going on from one part of the island in the heart of a kampong through a network of slaves. You get me? So this network had to have long been established, and for Kojos to be so proficient at it, I would go out and say that the Western rebellions that were taking place were more than likely orchestrated by the networks, orchestrated or influenced by the networks, by the Maroons of the Blue Mountains and their networks, which would eventually separate into the Windward and Leeward Maroons, right? Now, evidence of this is in the Sutton Rebellion, which took place in the middle of the island, around where the Karmahali Maroons would have been. Um, but the leader of the Sutton Rebellion, this is the first time that Kojo's name comes into like the historical records in 1690, right? That's why 1690 is a frame of reference. The Sutton Plantation was a huge estate, like 600 or so, or it might have been more. About 600 people were enslaved. Now, punk ass Wikipedia loves to lie about this. I see a lot of revisionist history, but the oldest text on it, the oldest text, and from Maroon history, says that about it's like 600 people. Wikipedia would be like, yeah, it was like 600. It was like 300 people, and 200 of them got taken right back into slavery. So and the rest died. So like 5 people got away. It wasn't really that successful. No, it was one of the most successful. It was so successful that in the Maroon War of 1734, when they shot a Maroon dead and they checked his body, they found a branding on him. And the branding was the mark of the Sutton plantation, meaning he had escaped from the Sutton plantation and been with the Maroons from 1690 to 1734. He's been a warrior. Yeah. So this rebellion was orchestrated by Kojo, and this is also the first time that Prince Naquan's name is mentioned in the records of Jamaica. So it's verified that Prince Naquan not only existed but was still alive at that time. Now we know again he was about 20 in 1642. This is in 1690. So um Kojo becomes general after this. He becomes the general of the Maroons. Now there's a famous battle where Kojo fights a Maroon from Madagascar. Now, this is interesting because it shows that the the slave trade wasn't just West Africa. And my brother Nakmizi was talking about this. The slave trade definitely had East Africa as well. Maybe not as much, but there are groups of people who were taken from Madagascar to be slaves, and they ended up in Jamaica. And they ended up in the west of Jamaica. Some by some chance they ended up in the west of Jamaica, and it was or no, no, the middle of Jamaica, and it was here that they escaped from their plantation, and I guess they might have set up their own little maroon territory, and Kojo was trying to consolidate everything under one umbrella. Like, now we can't be fractioned. It's not going to be your group, my group. We're going to be one. And when it came down to deciding who would be the leader of this new united Maroon clan, Kojo had to fight a Madagascan Maroon. And to my understanding, he killed him. They fought to death. And Kojo became chief of the Maroons. But at the time, he was known as the King of the Mountains, or the terrible King Kojo. Right? So slaves knew him. Some revered him. Some feared him. Some thought he was like a ghost or some shit. But he was also known as the Mountain Lion. Right? Now, we're gonna roll up another one, roll up another one. If you're feeling that, smash the like button. Yo, this week we're doing live streams about this. So, time to roll up. If I had a bowl, I'd bowl up. I bowl up. All right, hold on a second. Yeah, all right. I gotta wrap this one up in a few. All right. All right. So, where were we? Yeah, King of the Mountains. Now, Kojo had a lot of siblings, but he was the eldest. To the best of my understanding, the next in line was his brother, Akompong, but it's a variation or derivation of Nyakampong, which is my understanding is like how you say God, the God of Saturday. Nyakampong is the great God of Saturday. Now, if you know your Bible, Jesus said, "I am the Lord of the Sabbath." And Sabbath is, how do you say Saturday? How do you say Saturday in Hebrew? Sabbath. So I personally believe that Nyakampong is probably just a West African terminology for Yahweh. Perhaps I want to look into it a little bit more because he's called the God of Saturday, and there's only one God of Saturday. So it is known that in West Africa, that when they tried to push Sunday Christianity on West Africans, a lot of them weren't having it. They insist, well, Saturday's the holy day. Saturday's always been a holy day. That's why Saturday is known as the day of the great God. Nyakampong. That's what it means. The day of the great God, Saturday. So it's interesting to know that their God, or Kojo's God, is more than likely Jaja, the God of Saturday, Nyakampong. But Nyakampong, Akompong is his brother's name. Akompong. Let me see here. I'm almost out of paper. Oh no. So Akompong is his brother, and Akompong town is where the festival is going to be held. Akompong town is one of like the last standing Maroon towns, and obviously named after Akompong, but it was commissioned by Kojo to be built. Now Kojo also commissioned the building of the planning the before I get into that, Kojo, his brothers, he has his most famous sibling is Nanny of the Maroons, Queen Nani. Queen Nani of the Maroons, and I already made a video about Nani. You can go watch that one. It's real important. Go watch it. So Queen Nani, um, is known as Sarah Matilda Rowe, and um, okay. Before I get into Nani, let me see. Let me go through all the brothers. There's Kojo, Akompong, Kofi, Johnny, Kwao, and Kwako. Kwako. There was one more. Kwako. And Kwashi. Yeah, Kwashi. Yeah. So these are all like hard West African names. Kojo, Akompong, Kofi. Kojo, Akompong, Kofi, Johnny, Kwako, Kwao, Kwashi. Yeah, Kwashi. Kwashi Brony. So Kwashi Brony. Actually, his name was Kwash Kwako. Kwashi Brony. Kwashi, whatever his name is. But super African ass names, right? Showing that their descent is West African. So Kwashi Brony, Kwash Kwako, all of them, right? And there may have been another one named Opung. Um, but then there's Nani. And Nani, her English name was Matilda, Sarah Matilda Rowe, and she got the name Rowe. One of her descendants just fought in grappling is a UFC fighter, Phil Rowe. She got the name Rowe from her husband. Her husband had escaped from the Sutton plantation. No, not the Sutton plantation. Her husband escaped from the Orgill plantation, and he went by the name Swift Lomento. That was one of the names they called him. Actually, it was Swifflemento, 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 Swiftlemento, Swiftmento. Pretty much, he was Swift, and they called him Mento. But his English name, they called him Rose Harris. Rose Harris. And he became the boyfriend or husband of sort. Yeah, husband of Queen Nani. And Swiftlemento, being known as Rose Harris, um, Nani took the name. She went by the nickname Fanti Rose. Fanti Rose, and her sister went by the name Shanti Rose, or vice versa. They called them Fanti Rose and Shanti Rose. The Fanti and the Shanti, Fanti and Ashanti. Um, Fanti Rose and Shanti Rose, and they would call Swiftlemento another name, Papa Rose. They would call him Papa Rose, and Papa Rose became Paro. Paro. Papa Ro. Paro. And over time, the Rose became assimilated to Ro, which is a common name that is found in Saint Elizabeth, a European name. It became kind of synonymous with it. They just kind of blended the name together. But um, Nanny, Queen Nanny, would go by the English name Matilda Ro. Matilda Ro. And a few of her brothers were known to have taken it. Kojo Ro, Kojo Ro, Kofi, and Akompong were known to have the name Ro. And therefore a lot of chiefs from Akompong would possess that name. But it became like the biggest name in like Maroon culture. And there's a whole bunch of them. But then there's a lot of offshoots like Edwards and Foster and like a whole bunch of names that are offshoots of that name. Excuse me. Now, with that in mind, oh, spill my weed. All right. That is not weed. Russ, I want to sit in the. I'm going to spill all my shit looking for this one nugget. Get over here. All right, I got it. Now, where were we? We were, yeah, about the name that he took, Kojo Rule, and he Cuffy. Now, Kojo and his siblings, they would kind of divide up the island in a sense. Kojo would go all the way to the west and settle Kojo's town, which was eventually destroyed at the end of the Second Maroon War by some coward ass pussy ass niggas. I will avenge you on blood. Fuck you. Yeah, on blood, bitch. Kojo tone, a Kompong tone, which still stands today, and Cuffy's tone. And there's no mention of Johnny's tone. Now, Johnny is like the least spoken about Maroon, and I want to find out more about Johnny. So Johnny, yeah. Now, fun thing that Kojo and Cuffy would do. Remember, the Maroons would subsist on farming, but they would also do a lot of raiding, and they would rob plantations a lot, and it wasn't always in a violent manner. Sometimes stealth was better. So remember, I told you that the Maroons had a network with the slaves, where slaves knew how to contact Maroons. They knew how to. Some people knew the horns. Some people knew how to find them, right? So some people would know, like, yo, we're gonna orchestrate a runaway at such and such time. So, oftentimes, Kojo and Cuffy would go down onto the plantations and disguise themselves as slaves. Not that I'm not. That's not the fun part, but they'd go there to steal shit, namely alcohol. There's one story about Cuffy taking a giant bottle of whiskey, a giant, not a bottle, like a barrel, like they got to roll this motherfucker up a hill, a giant barrel of whiskey, and he was disguised as a slave, and he had to lie. He had to lie when he got caught, and he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna play dumb. And someone went to go check facts, and he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna run out of here with this shit. And yeah, once they got back to the hills, he ditched his disguise, throw that shit on his shoulders, and jumped. But yeah, they would do things like that often. Kojo would apparently go sit in on meetings for the general, pretending to be one of his servants. Stuff like that, right? But they would always orchestrate raids. So the idea that Maroons are not freedom fighters is definitely you're kind of stupid. That was Kojo's entire mo. That was his entire mo. That's how the Suitan Rebellion happened. Now, like I said, I accredit all the rebellions that were going on from the arrival of Kojo, um, from the 1600s, from the 1670s, even up to when outright war broke out with them. I attribute all those rebellions to Kojo's party, or in at least the same group of Maroons. Because, I mean, yeah, there could be some things that were started from the inside, but in the cases where these large scale rebellions ended up in Maroonage, how do they know where to go? How do they know there was some type? The fact that Kojo would regularly traverse the islands, even if people weren't a part of Kojo's plan or did that because of it, they eventually became a part of it, you know? And the raids went on. Now, when Kojo had separated from Nani, um, from East and West, he left Nani in charge of what became known as the Great Negro Town or Nani Town, which was the biggest settlement, and actually it was sort of a building on of what was originally there from about 200 years ago, which is what the native Maroons had already established. But it was refortified and it was built in layers. Now, this is often credit to Nani's genius. And I would never downplay anything that Queen Nani did, you know. But I would say that possibly more Kojo and his forefather, because you have to understand they were older than Queen Nani, and it's where Kojo, it's where Kojo was the eldest, and he was already going on tours through the island. He was already building stuff like this. He was already doing that. At this time, Queen Nani was a little girl. She was like 16. Perhaps she may have been born in the 80s, but she doesn't really show up on the scene till much later, in stories at least. Now, one second. Tree little bird. Now, a Sappho house, curry raw. Bird, chilling on my doorstep, smoking fat blunts, singing. Go on the store, no man. Yeah, bro, we busting down another one. Flavorful. So yeah, if y'all still here with me, give me a 1. Or say something. Feel free to ask some questions, y'all. Feel free to ask some questions. Yeah, man. Now, Kojo. So the building of the towns. That's what we're up to. The building of the towns and what else? They did them. So Nani took over the east. Kojo took over the west, and you had like sprinkles of towns in between. Now Kwao stayed with Nani. I think Kwako had like a place in the middle of the island, or somewhere around Nani, and Kwashi was with him. I know Kwashi also went on like ninja missions, if you will, like disguising himself and whatnot. Johnny is the least written about, but Akampong and Coffee, they stayed with Kojo. Akampong obviously building a Akampong town, but people don't really tell me enough about Akampong. But then again, this is about Kojo. I will do some research about Akampong when I get there. It's like, didn't Akampong have kids? Everybody's related to Kojo? Nobody's related to Cuffy? I know some of the rows are related to Cuffy. But Cuffy also went by the name John Cuffy. John Cuffy Rule. So, yeah. Now, it's where we got 1690. We'll move on from 1690. After the rebellion of 1690, the British government started taking the Maroons real serious, and they realized that it was a force in the mountains that they had to contend with. And around the early 1700s, they started sending troops up there to come contend with us. Now, let me see if I remember the order. Hold up. Check, y'all here with me? Yeah, okay. Maroons. Let me see if I got. I have it written down. Check, check, check. Salute. Appreciate y'all still being here. Says I'm listening, I'm working, and I'm traveling at the same time. Salute though. Appreciate you, brother. You don't got a comment. Do you think? Drive safe. My brother Nitty G in the building. Salute, King. Says be safe and have a happy new year. You too, my brother. Be safe. Hashtag LDBC. So, all right. Yeah, I was just looking at my freaking like list. So there was some douchebag named Captain Soper. Gay ass name. They sent this nigga named Captain Soper to fucking die. And Captain Soper did die. Captain Soper was the first fuckboy to lead a party of idiots to come fight the Maroons in their own territory. Didn't make it far. Captain Soper didn't make it back. Soper. What the fuck? Yeah, so Captain Soper was the first to get clapped. Then again, in the 1730s, they sent the second attack was in the 1730s. They sent a dude named Captain Brooks. Captain Brooks, Peters, McDonald's, and Bacon. Captain Peters, McDonald's, and Bacon. Yeah, so they sent these freaking turd balls. They got their asses thoroughly whipped. Thoroughly whipped. Right? Now, in 1731, they decided, oh, okay, so we got our asses whipped twice. Cool. We're going to get these special troops from England. You'll see. So they went and got special troops from England. And in 1731, those special troops from England got their special ass whipped in an unceremonial fashion without losing a single Maroon. The tactics of the Maroon often as we'd spoken about, was disguising themselves as trees, right? Now, when they disguised themselves as trees, uh, they disguised themselves as trees, and they would just watch. They would stalk their opponents. They would allow the British to come into their territory, and they would just stand there as trees, watch them, let the troops pass by, cut off their exit, and start raining jungas down on them. The jungas being spears, right? They just throw spears, and the trees would come alive, and swords would come out and just chop their heads off. Yeah. And often this would happen in the dead of night, in the dark. The Maroons could see very well, but the British are over here with their clanky guns and weapons making a bunch of noise. And you got dudes dressed like this guy over here with machetes ready to ice you. And they would sit there for hours to do this. They would practice it. Just sitting there for hours, breathing. Stalking their opponent quietly, right? Now, yeah, this is what they were famous for. Now, the weapons that the Maroons used, they didn't often use guns, although sometimes they used guns. Sometimes they would shoot, but not often. Simply because the guns were loud. The guns gave away your position. That's why the British always lost, because they didn't know where the Maroons were, and these dudes are standing here dressed as trees, holding spears that they can throw for a while and like rip through your chest. That they're expert at throwing. Each guy has like a couple spears that they're hiding, spears that are dressed up as trees. So you're not gonna see it, and then you're firing. Then they'll send one guy out. You'll see him. You'll fire your gun. You'll miss because he's fast, and you're sitting there reloading in your flank. One guy's taking a knee. The other guy is shooting. Okay, we know where your positions are. All of a sudden, you see a tree move, and then you see a rain of arrows and freaking. You see spears coming down that they call jungas. You see jungas coming down, or a sword. So the weapons were typically the junga, which was the spear, or the sword. Um, you had some like variations of knives and swords. Let me see. Sometimes the gun, um, the horn was used for communication. So after you just walked by an army of Maroons just dressed as trees, you didn't even know that you passed Maroons, and you kept on walking. They're a couple feet behind you, little ways behind you, about a mile behind you. One of them starts blowing a horn that is heard for miles. So now a mile ahead of you is another group of Maroons dressed as trees. They heard that, so that was a signal that you're on your way, that you came past them. You're surrounded, and you don't even know it. And then it's dark. They can see you, but you can't see them. So yeah, um, the troops from England were not successful the first time. However, they would come back in 1732. Now, get this. Real shit, y'all. Real shit. Real shit. There were three parties, right? One party was led by Peters, by Captain Peters, right? And he was joined by Cresswell, Lee, and Morris. And they led their own parties. They were the main party, right? There was another party led by Captain Sambo. Captain Sambo was a black man. Captain Sambo was previously rescued by the Maroons. Didn't like Maroon lifestyle. Decided to go back to the plantation. Tell the white man, where the Maroons were so that he can get his freedom papers and wouldn't have to worry about fighting off the white man. And then took money and became a black shot to hunt Maroons. He was instrumental in the capturing of Nanitone. And his name was Captain Sambo. So when you call niggas Sambos, that's what they're talking about. Old Sambo ass nigga. Now Sambo was joined by Captain Allen. And then you had another party known as the Coral Main Party, by Captain Coral Main. He was a sea captain. As they decided to take 3 routes to Nanitone. Yeah. So Kojo was a brilliant strategist. There's some things that I've read that they attribute to Nani, like Nani Pot. I'm sure that I'm sure there was kind of a little bit of both, because Kojo was the older brother and definitely a strategist, but I'm sure Nani was more than a capable strategist herself, you know. But I saw Kojo was leading the Maroons overall, whereas each of the other Maroons had their towns to lead. Um, so you had one of these excursions when Kojo was fighting against one of the against the British, right? And he gets, I think it might have been him and Cuffy or another Maroon, but they got separated, and basically he got pursued by one of the British soldiers, and whatchamacallit, he's in a showdown with this dude, and I don't remember how did I go. He was in a showdown with a dude, and he threw his jung at him and missed, and like ran into the bushes and basically hid, and basically managed to hide from the dude, right? Because he only had 3 jungas to throw. He only had 3 jungas to, so he's fighting this dude with a spear, and the dude has a gun, right? And he has to stay silent as possible. And this showdown is going on for hours, and the dude who's pursuing him, a British soldier, right? The dude is using certain tactics that Kojo's like, yo, this dude fights like a Maroon. He's being ultra quiet. He's like throwing a rock to draw my attention. Like he would throw a rock or just, he would do stuff to make Kojo want to throw his junga. And then as soon as Kojo threw his junga, he would shoot at that area. And he managed to shoot Kojo, right? But Kojo just played dead, just to pretend like he got shot and just quietly crawled away. Just didn't make a sound, quietly crawled away, and stayed hidden in the bushes, right? And he's observing. He's like, "Yo, this guy is using Maroon tactics." So Kojo just is like, "All right, I'm gonna stay still. I got 1 junga left. 1 junga left. That's 1 spear." And he's just chilling, waiting for this dude to make a sound so he could throw it and just clap him. And he heard this dude twist off a bottle cap. Like he heard him writing, and he heard him twist off a bottle cap and drink. And when he heard him boop, when he heard that gulp, he took his junga and threw that shit in the air. And it caught him right in the chest and killed that dude. And Kojo was sad. Yup, he was sad. When Kojo got up and he saw that he killed him. He's like, yeah, I killed him. Awesome. He went over to him and he took his diary from him. No, he went over to him and he looked at what the man was carrying, and what the man, it was eventually translated for Kojo by a man named Harris, which was one of the dudes that he defeated in battle, was one of the soldiers that he captured. But he took the man's diary and he held on to it. But what the man had written later on, when he would see the translation, the man was writing, he wrote, his diary revealed that the soldier that Kojo was fighting was a Scottish soldier who was captured by the British and made into a slave. So, yeah, there kind of was a Scottish slave trade. It wasn't as severe as the African slave trade. Doesn't compare. Lots of Scots are racist, whatever. But the fact of the matter is there were some people who were abducted by the British and forced into do labor. A lot of them ended up in Jamaica. This actually happened. Again, wasn't as severe because a lot of them would end up just becoming British soldiers. They would end up getting their freedom as British soldiers, or they would whatchamacallit, they would get like easier jobs because they were dying doing the black jobs. They get a little better treatment, like they'd be like jockeys or whatnot, horse combers and shit, sleep in better quarters. But a lot of them like had respect for black people, and they kind of suffered with them because if they messed up, they got their asses beat. So some of them were like really friendly with black people, you know. Some of them were real cool. So there was actually two white boys who were known to have helped out the Maroons to help them get guns, to help them get ammunition, like later on in the Maroon War, when they really started resorting to guns. But yeah, right? I'll wrap this one up soon. So, yeah. So when he killed it, the dude had gotten abducted, right? He had got abducted by the British, and he was sold into slavery to Jamaica, and he became a part of the He became actually no, he became a part of the British military, and he that was one of the special troops that were brought in to fight the Maroons. And he wrote in his diary that he had studied Maroon tactics. After the British had suffered so many defeats, they started studying the Maroon tactics. So the tactic of camouflage came directly from the Maroons. It's a Maroon tradition, right? Which came from West Africa. Now, yeah, it's where give me 1 second. The dude was forced to fight Maroons, right? He was like, he wrote in his diary how he just wanted to go home. Like he pretty much he hated the British. He was like, yeah, I mean, they're friendly to me. I drink with them, I get drunk with them, we party and we just go around and we do fucked up shit. But truth be told, I kind of fucking hate these people. They abducted me when I was a kid. I was like 16. They abducted me, and like now 10 something years later, I've been going around the world killing for them. I've been a soldier for them. I just can't wait to finish this last tour, and I'm gonna go home, and I'm just gonna go settle down and whatnot. And yeah, it's unfortunate that he had to run into Kojo that day. Should have put down your arms and went home, homie. Should have been like, oh, he got away. The Maroon got away. I'm out. But he went on and he wrote in his diary, I'm thirsty. And he took a drink of the water. And when he took a drink of the water, Kojo heard him. And that's when he threw his Jenga, and that was it. It's kill or be killed. Now, there was another battle where the captives, it was in the Battle of the Plains. It was where the captives presented Kojo with a gift. Kojo always gave the people an option. Whenever he captured soldiers, he was like, "Listen, we can either take you back. We can either let you go. We can take you back blindfolded so you can't figure out where we are. And if you ever come after Maroons again, we kill you. Or what you call it." Or you can stay here and be free with us. You can become a part of the Maroons, right? Now they didn't say Maroon. I won't tell you what we called ourselves yet. All right, so we'll wrap this one up in 10 minutes. So Kojo would receive a sword from this battle after defeating his enemies in the Battle of the Plains. They would go on. They presented him with a sword. Now this sword still exists. It's in the museum. Now, if you've ever drank that rum, Captain Morgan, on the picture, right on the bottle, there's a picture of a dude, Captain Morgan, with his foot up and a sword. That sword. That sword's in the Akompong Museum. Yep. After Henry Morgan died, his sword, his famous sword, fell into the hands of a British soldier. And that British soldier went into war with the Maroons. And when he was defeated, he turned it over as an offering. And Kojo first refused it. He was like, but Henry's using it. It's like, the thing of it is, Maroons actually respected Henry Morgan. He was the governor of Jamaica for a while. Yeah, Captain Morgan was the governor of Jamaica, and Maroons actually liked him because Captain Morgan was a buccaneer. Buccaneers and Maroons were tight. It's been supposed or suggested that Maroons often, it's been found that the way that Buccaneers cook, Buccaneers jerk their food. And Buccaneers often marooned on islands. They would go steal people's shit and we're going to go off this island and hang out and be debauched and whatnot. Off the coast of the northeast coast of Jamaica, like at the foot of the Blue Mountains, if you will, it has been suggested, more than likely, Maroons for a number of years have been trading, maybe even before, during the Spaniards and the British. They've been trading with other Maroons or people in Cuba and other parts of the Caribbean from a port over there. Because first off, it's been found that they were trading jerk from that port. And then we would find jerk in other places that would frequent that port. TJ Sports, salute. So yeah, we'd find jerk. Now, the Buccaneers were known to have have to practice the practice of a jerk in their food. And this is certainly a Maroon practice. And then there's definitely been trade between the Maroons and Buccaneers, and there's been story of seafaring Maroons who actually hung out with Buccaneers and went on excursions with them. You know, so Captain Morgan was known to the Maroon community, and Kojo knew exactly who he was. But when his sword was presented to him, um, Kojo was like, "Isn't he using it?" And they were like, "No, Captain Morgan passed away." So Kojo took the sword, and that's how Kojo became in possession of Captain Morgan's sword. And when I go to Jamaica, I'll take a video and some pictures of that sword. I have a picture of it now, but it's probably not the clearest picture. But when I go there, I'll get some better footage. Um, with that in mind, there were there were several other battles. There was another battle where let me see. Let me check my notes real quick. Check. Yeah. So there were other times. There were other battles. There was a time where the British got a bunch of Native Americans. No, not even Native American, like Mosquito Indians, as they called them, to come to Jamaica. They took them from Central America and shipped them to Jamaica to come track and kill Maroons. And when they found the Maroons, they found a bunch of Jungas and they all died, and so did the British soldiers with them. Because what the Maroons did was create, this was Cudjoe's idea. They created a fake village, a fake Maroon village. And they put it in like a pit in a sense, like where the in a valley. So when you came over the hill and you went into the valley, like, oh, there's the village, and you descended on it. Was it whatever? It might either been a valley or a clearing. But they went into this area, and once the British were there, they were utterly surrounded, and arrows, just not arrows, spears just rained down. They just threw them up in the air, indiscriminate. They just started throwing them because there's a bunch of troops in this area. They just cut off their retreat. They had to come in a narrow file, right? So when they were exiting the clearing, they had to exit in a narrow file, and it made it easy to just destroy them as they came out with arrows, with spears, swords, and the like. But the ones that were in the little nest area, they got rained down. Like Jungas were coming down indiscriminately, like raining. They just took hundreds of them and just threw them up in the air. And as soon as they came down, somebody's dying. Somebody's dying. A lot of you are gonna die. A lot you're gonna scatter. A lot of you are gonna die. And that's how that went. And that was it for the Mosquito Indians. Then let me see. When Nanny Town was taken over, eventually it was taken back, and that led to a period known as the Scatterwoods period. But that was mostly for Nuneaton. Um, Kojo was in the west, and Nani had to make the trek across Jamaica, um, with the rest of the Maroons of her side, and they came to the west to stay with Kojo, but they couldn't stay too long because pretty much the towns were not built for that many people. So they had to go off and build their own town. They had to rebuild their town. Um, and so they did. They eventually would rebuild, no, they would retake Nanitone. Um, but Kojo, as I've mentioned, moved from the east to the west. They went mainly to join up with John Kofi, and Kojo was like, "No, we can't have too many people in one area. We're supposed to maintain a post over there." And she eventually went back to the east after some time. see, Captain Shuttleforth, they called some troops from Gibraltar twice to come fight the Maroons, and they came up the back way. And I think it was on some like Spartan shit where the sailor, like the boat that left them there, so the boat that dropped them off on the back of Jamaica, so they can come up behind the Maroon village. They left, and they were like, "No one's leaving this island until you guys go up to that mountain and kill these people." And they go up to the mountain, and none of them came back. None of them came back. I would love to go to that part of Jamaica and do an excavation. I would love to. I would love to go over there with shovel. I don't care what you say, bro. I'm digging over here. You know. But a group of Europeans who moved to Jamaica heard about the story and they bought some property, and they named their property Seaman's Valley. So a lot of people are like, oh, this is where it happened. Like, no, they named their property after it, but that's not where it took place. They just named their property after it, which is a dick thing to do. So we got to find the real site of Seaman's Valley and like start digging there, because that was the site of the Maroons defeating the Seamen. None of them came home alive. None of them came back. All died. Now Captain Sambo, the Black Party, he by far was one of their like most instrumental parties in taking over Nanitone. Um, right? Captain Brooks, the Black Shots. Let me see. Shuttleforth. Check. All right, we're back up in here. Yeah, so I'm gonna wrap this one up, but to top it off, yeah, they had a bunch more battles, um, but it was where after I think the defeat of the Seamen like twice, um, the British came to want a treaty. They were like, bro, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, there's some important things we got to go over. So in the 1730s, it was where the British sought peace, and even though I think the Maroons might have sought peace too, you know, but it was where the problem was a lot of times when Maroons rescued people, they would go back to the plantation and just turn into black shots because the British were offering the money. They're like, yeah, we're gonna go down there, we're gonna take the money and come back and kill you. We're gonna snitch on you. That's better because we get a paper from the white man that says we're free. We don't have to run away for our freedom. They'll give us our freedom, right? And all we gotta do is sell you out. So for 85 years, the Black Shots were fighting against the Maroons. And when I say 85 years, I'm talking about the Black Shots had existed since 16 before 1690, definitely. When were the Black Shots? Well, Black Shots were definitely employed in some degree. The first, yeah, actually, the first group of people to come after the Maroons was in 1660, and they were essentially the first Black Shots. They were technically they were former Maroons. Juan de Bolis. They were Juan de Bolis's party. They were technically former Maroons who had become servants to the British, who in sense were the precursor to the Black Shot. So um, it's where they had stopped freeing people from plantations because a lot of um, the fall of Nani Town was it was instrumental because it was the black people, the former slaves were instrumental in the destruction of Nani Town. So the people who were freeing slaves were also fighting them. The people that you free one guy today, and then next week you're fighting him because he snitched you out. He ran back. There's tons of stories of dudes who ran back. Like I got names of these dudes. Excuse me. I can go for names right now. Let me see. Primus, Cyrus Garbrandt, Jack Mitchell, Joe Harris, Cuffy, Scipio, Cupid, Venus, Afifa, Kwashi. Those are some of them who became prominent black shots. They were former Maroons. They basically got rescued off the plantation, found out, lived with the Maroons for a while, couldn't rough in the mountains, ran back to the plantation, got a pass, came back with guns to hunt Maroons. And Captain Sambo was the most infamous. Scipio was famous for Sambo was famous for taking over Nutty Tone, but Scipio was paid for killing Nutty, allegedly, but he didn't kill her. He shot her, but he didn't kill her. So the most success, as it was written by a British officer, that let it be said for their part, the Negroes were instrumental in were far superior than their white counterparts, far effective than their white counterparts in dealing with the Maroons. So the Maroons weren't losing to the British soldiers. It was the black people, the former slaves, who were fighting them, who understood their tactics. A lot of them were from Africa. So it became Maroons versus everybody else. You either Yankunku, pick your bow, or fuck you. Pick your bow, Yankunku, pick your bow, we're God's chosen people. So it was definitely like where Maroons kind of saw themselves as superior and better. And hey, there was an open invitation in the 1730s from the Maroons, because when open war was declared on the Maroons after the defeat of Captain Shuttleforth. Hold on, let me go back. Was it Shuttleforth? It was uh, destruction of Nottingham. Before the destruction, so it had to be like before 1734. When the Maroons were really successful at it was when they kept on handing the British defeat after defeat. When the British were losing bad, it was said that slaves started joking. Bro, slavery temporarily ended in Jamaica. It was where, if you guys remember that episode, remember that episode of Catcher Freeman on the Boondocks? The part where the slave master, he comes to plantation and he's all nice. He's like, "Now I asked y'all if y'all could stop singing. You know, we got some work that needs to be done." And they kept on they kept on joking on the slave master. They were like, "Yo, master, the end of call, the end of my dick." And they were joking on the slave master and herbing him. That was Jamaica 1734, prior, like around 1734, because it was public knowledge that the British troops were losing over and over to the Maroons badly. At that point, they had accounted that in 2 years they'd only killed 2 Maroons. And they found that in the course of no, it wasn't, no, it was 10 years, 10 and 10. It was 10 and 10, maybe 10 and 10. In 10 years, they may have killed 10, or was it 2 and 10 and 5 and 10? I don't remember. Whatever. It was a low number for the number of battles they went in. They were dying. They were dying at a high rate, and the slaves knew this. So there was an open invitation. It was like left, right, and center. People were just running away. Like, slaves didn't have to run. They was like, "All right, I'm out." They were out. But sometimes troops would bring them back. Now, if they were smart enough, they would calculate it. And you had a lot more runaways at that time. But you had a section of people, when they ran away, they were like, you know, it wasn't so bad on the plantation. They were just bending to us. So we just do a little bit of work, and then we got a free place to stay. We got some food, and the massive the bitch now. So we're gonna go back and we're gonna enjoy this. Y'all just keep making them scared and shit. We gonna go back down there. And now some people couldn't run because elderly, whatnot, whatever reason it could be. Some people had to stay there. Some people had reasons where they couldn't. Some people wanted to go back. Now, a letter that is preserved is a letter from a plantation owner who is complaining to the parliament, and he's saying to the parliament, "You got to do something about this maroon problem because my slaves are disobedient to me. They're bullying me basically. It's where I can't tell them to do nothing, or else they threaten to call the Maroons on me. They know where the Maroons are, bruh. So they're threatening to call the Maroons. I can't discipline them. They say if you with me, I'm gonna call the Maroons, and like I'm scared to do something. Yo, you gotta do something." And this is what prompted them to send another party up there, right? Because at this time, the British economy was so affected because Jamaica they were heavily dependent on Jamaica. Slavery was necessary for the British economy in Jamaica. The sugar, yeah, huge part of their economy. When motherfuckers stop working, yeah, they feel it all the way in Britain. Their tea, all that shit, everything, they felt it. I think this was before India, before they started raping India, right? So at this time, they were raping Jamaica. So they were just milking the shit out of Jamaica. So when slavery slowed down, production slowed down, money slowed down. A lot. It the war with the Maroons was so costly and it slowed things down for so long in Jamaica that it greatly affected the British economy. And this was the first time that they sought for peace with Kojo. And it just didn't work out. It just didn't work out. Now, there was an open invitation from the Maroons to the slave population. But again, this whole thing, a lot of people didn't join the Maroons. A lot more chose to sign up to hunt. I just gave you some names. A lot more chose money to go hunt Maroons. They basically got to live the mountain life up in the hills and all. It's not for them, not for them, right? So with that in mind, it was Maroons versus everybody else. And Kojo, excuse me, moving on into the war, you had even black shots come after Kojo. Now, at the end of the towards the end of the 30s, the 1730s, they would come to a truce with the British. The British would come to a truce. They would, through the slave network, um, they would have slaves escort the British to the Maroons. And it's from the Maroon perspective, the Maroons sent for the British. From the British perspective, yeah, the savages came to us, and no, it was like it was said that through the network, the idea came out that the Maroons would want a truce, and they led the British there and whatnot. But the first negotiation was actually that Cudjoe wanted a boat. He wanted boats to carry his people to Africa because his father had always talked about it and he wanted to go there. That was the land he wanted to go. He didn't want to be in Jamaica. He wanted to go to Africa. He's a prince. He's the son of Prince Nakwan. Nakwan should be king. You feel me? Nakwan was a prince, so he wanted to bring his people back to West Africa. And the British were like, that ain't got shit to do with us. We ain't got nothing to do with that. We're not the Spaniards. We're not doing none of that shit. So the British weren't trying to do that. Um, I think the second negotiation, it might have fell through. I think the third time they came through, it was they had made a negotiation, and it was we will take the interior of the island, the pretty much the land that we have now. The Maroon land is gonna stay Maroon land. We ain't gonna be your slaves. We ain't gonna be your bitch. We're not going to help slaves run away anymore, right? But not even that. We're not gonna raid your shit. We're not gonna steal your stuff anymore. We're not gonna come down there and burn down your stuff and take your stuff and pretty much interfere with your plantation. We're just going to live our lives up here. You just can't do that. You just can't try to enslave any of us. Now, This is 10 years after the Maroons. This is 85 years into the Maroons being hunted by other black people. Remember that. This is black people who were sold into slavery to white people by black people who then ran away from slavery and were hunted by black people. Right? So it's not no all skin folk is kinfolk. No, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. Right. So Kojo, the agreement was originally pretty much we live free up here. You can do your thing down there. Right? That's your part of the island. This is our part of the island. Now, if this island gets invaded by the Spaniards or anyone else, another group of people try to take over the island, another Bakra, since we already have this agreement with you, we don't want to have to war with another group of Bakra, right? So we will help you defend the land, right? Now, um, they Kojo was like, all right, cool, we got an agreement done. The British wanted it in writing, and he's like, I don't really do all of that, that like signature shit. I don't do that, right? But the British were like, no, it's just like formality. We got to bring this back. First off, what needs to be understood is that the British are a bunch of pussy holes. It's a blood clot pussy hole, because these were peasants talking to a fucking king. But the way these peasants went back to tell the story, they were like, oh, he was there and he was like, he was at his feet. He was like groveling to us, and yeah, we were the shit, and you should have seen these niggers. No. The people who went to negotiate with Kojo, they were their rank. You're a nobody. You're a nobody. They were like, oh, general of whatever, I don't, captain or whatever the fuck their rank was, right? And they had to come back to the governor and whatnot. Um, but when they were brought in, the story of how they were brought into the heart of the Maroon territory, these dudes were shitting themselves. The way they were led in, they were like, bro, we can be killed at any time if they want. We know there are people around us. We just can't see them. And they knew our every move. Like we would reach a point and you would just hear a horn, and then a door would open. You're like, bro, I don't see nobody, but they see us. So they brought you in, right? And they sent you back to go tell them, hey, this is we're negotiating on this. So they were like, we got to bring back to our masters that in writing, because that's our custom. So Kojo was like, fine, here's our custom, motherfucker. Give me your blood. And they did a blood ritual. Now, this made negotiations fall apart, and they had to come back. And eventually, they relented. Like, if you want to fucking sign this, then you got to do the blood ritual. And the blood ritual pretty much makes us brothers. It means that we will not fight as a people. Nothing more. I'm not your servant. I don't hunt nobody for you. We are brothers. Now, the Maroons had done this before because there were many different tribes from Africa and all over. The Spanish Maroons too, even Madagascar. So they become one people. There was like apparently a ceremony, which I'm not doing none of that shit. Fuck that. Um, but there was like the mixing of blood of the people, because there were certain Maroon tribes that warred with each other. So to become one, there was like something like this. There was a blood ritual, and this what was done with the British at that time. And it's basically a non-hostilities pact. That's all. Now, if we refer to Ethiopia and Italy, when Ethiopia and Italy beefed, Italy came with a treaty, and Italy was like, oh, on one treaty it said, oh, well, we're just agreeing to not fight each other. On the other treaty, it said that the Ethiopians, they love us. They want to suck us off. If you motherfuckers come to fight us, the Ethiopians, they said they're gonna fuck you up. So Ethiopia is swearing to be our to defend us. They're our protectorate. Look, see, we got a treaty with them. They were showing this to the world, and Ethiopia is like, fuck you. We're not becoming your freaking bodyguard. Your freaking what? We're not a protectorate state. That's not. We never agreed to that, and that led to another war, right?
So there's a lot of revisionist history, and the pen is mightier than the sword. So they tried to tell you that Kojo, if you look at the contract, the treaty that was signed, it makes it seem like it's more like a terms of surrender. That's not a treaty. That's not understand the Maroons had not lost a single war, a battle up to this point. The British were desperate. Their economy was crashing. They brought troops from all over the world to fight these people and kept on losing. So and there was miracles that happened there. A lot of this I attribute the Maroon success to the Most High God, which it is Sabbath. So we want to get into the Shabbat Shalom. So Maroons recognize that they're Israelites, and all the miracles, a lot of miraculous things happen in the mountains through Queen Nani and Swift Lamento. Queen Nani was she had like which I'll say for another day, Pumpkin Hill and whatnot, a whole bunch of stuff, healing, bro. There was a whole bunch of miraculous things that even the British saw these miraculous things that were happening in the mountains, and they reported. There are troops who their testimony of their experience with the Maroons and the miraculous things that they witnessed, that they went into insane asylums because of their testimony, and it's on record. You can find these things. There's archives of these. There's one dude who was in an insane asylum because he was, or at least he went to an insane asylum because he refused to retract his statement that the trees were coming to life. Of course, we know that really wasn't it, but there was a bunch of other things that they report on, like magic ass bullets and like flying people and shit like that, and motherfuckers being cut open and like regenerating. But it's no doubt that Yehovah, the Most High God, is with the Maroons, and what you call it, something else I want to get into before I wrap this up. Oh, the treaty, yeah. So it's where the British make the treaty seem like a terms of surrender, because while Kojo did speak a bit of English and was learning English, he was not proficient in it. And the British, what they committed to writing, because they had beefed, um, the terms that they committed to writing, they left and they came back. And the British, it was essentially like the the crown was like, no, no, we want terms, we want these terms, because they were telling the British, oh yeah, the niggers, they want to surrender, they want to give up, they want a truce. But no, it was more like, hey, look, we're tired of murdering your ass. We can keep fucking you up. We're not desperate at all. We can keep whooping your ass. But, bro, we don't want to live. We kind of want to just live our life. Again, from like the way the British Journal, how they recorded when they were brought into the depths of the Maroon territory, where they were like, bro, um, what? There's a whole civilization. There's a whole organized warrior civilization out here. They just didn't want a war anymore. And they knew that you would be interested in a truce. So they did what was best for them and their people, their children. You get me? A truce. But the British took it to the emissaries of the British, these captains and whatnot. They ran back to the British government like, yeah, these niggas are surrendering. Yeah, we got them. Yeah, you should have seen them. They knew who was master. They would tell the outside world one thing while they were getting hurt in front of real niggas. So with that in mind, they went. It was where they brought their superiors told them to add more terms. Like, oh, if they're surrendering, then add these terms, make them do this, and make them do that. And they came back and because these dudes don't read English and they're about to sign it, they're like, oh, we can just add these terms. And Kojo goes, no, I can't read this, but I know you added stuff. Where's the original paper? And they brought out the original paper, and Kojo signed that. Right? Allegedly. Now, to my understanding, he might have signed it in blood. No, he did the blood treaty. I don't know that he actually signed it, but he definitely did the blood treaty. He may have signed that one. Now, the second treaty, which is the one that they were trying to get him to agree with all the effed up terms, which I'm going to go into in a second. It doesn't have a signature. It has an X on it, right? If the man can read and write English, why would he write his name as an X? I ask, because if he can read and write English, and he's the son of Prince Naquan, and he's been ruling the mountains for 85 years and whooping your ass, because at this time, Kojo is an old man. He's an old man. He knows his death is coming. He's about 85 at this time, because he was born at the conflict. He is the war. So Kojo wanted the war to end with him, because he's about to leave. So he's like, the least I can do is secure a truce. I don't know that these people are going to be able to lead and secure the Maroons the way that I did. You know, perhaps train a successor, but you never know. You never know. People have their ambitions. So what it came down to was Kojo wanted a truce before he went out. He wanted to bring the war to an end one way, shape, or form, right? And he did not agree to enslave nobody for his freedom. He did not agree to catch no slaves. He agreed to stop freeing people. Because guess what? The people he freed, they kind of ran back to the plantation. And mostly it's, I'm going to stop raiding your plantation. And that's fair. You don't come bother me, I don't come bother you. And I'll defend the country with you because I live here. Now, there are people who, at the end of the Maroon War, at the signing of the treaty, they had a choice. There were some people who were like, I like the plains, and they went right back down to serve with the British. And there were some who were like, I want to be a free person. I'm staying up here. And that was the drawing of the line. So once that was drawn, it was like, dude, if a runaway came up in the mountains, I can't harbor you because now I'm violating the treaty. It looks like we kind of let you free. And to be honest, this was still being done by Maroons. So pretty much it was kind of required for Maroons to escort them back because I can't harbor you. Not in Maroon territory. You should have done that before the fucking war. Your ancestors should have done that before the war. Now for the new people, that's kind of messed up. That's kind of messed up for the new people who were just brought here. But the fact of the matter is, they fought a war for 85 years, and it was a lot of these new people. Now, with that in mind, it was still where it wasn't a consistent thing. It wasn't a like, oh, all Maroons, hey, let's go catch us some slaves, like they make it out to be. Now, in the actual treaty that the British put out there, they make it sound like Kojo is their bitch. Like, oh, you will do as the crown says. You're a servant of the crown. You're a captain now. And they called him a captain. Now, again, if he could read and write this, why would a guy who was whooping your ass regularly submit to these terms? Now, here's the funny thing. In those terms, they say that it's only 1,600, right? No. 1,600 acres of land that the British is allowing the Maroons to have. And that Kojo is signing off on this. Okay, if you own over 16,000 acres of land, why would you sign a document saying you only are keeping 1,600? Why would you do that? And these are people you're beating in a war. Why would you negotiate a truce and give up 10,000 acres of land? Well, he didn't see what was proven in the British archives was that was actually 16,000. They changed it. They found an older copy where it's 16,000. So any documents saying that Maroons agreed to 1,600 acres of land, that's a lie. And anything else that it contains is probably a lie too. He didn't know. No, it's 16,000 acres of land. Cockpit country is one of it. Now, with that in mind, so the document that you see that is the treaty that you can look up, that's what the British promote, um, saying that King Kojo, see, almost made me call him captain, because he's consistently represented as the captain. You're a captain. You're a captain. But it's really to demote him, because no, it was an agreement between the king of the mountains and the king of the British Empire, albeit a larger empire. But you're a faggot that sits on your throne in a powdered wig, you little pussy. You don't do shit. At least Alexander the Great, despite being who he is, at least Alexander the Great went into battle. Caesar was a warrior. A lot of kings were warriors first. You're just a pussy. The King of England took troops from England all the time to go fight, but you never once went to Jamaica to go scrap. So yeah, the King Powdered Wig would get his head decapitated. You don't even know how to hold a sword. Well, I have a pet and I can tell people to come kill you, but they keep getting murked. That's why you want a truce with me. So now they flip the truce with the world to make it seem like it's a terms of surrender. The truce seems more like there's no benefit in it for the Maroons besides freedom, which is something they already had. They just don't have to fight you for it anymore. So the contract became exaggerated. Um, Now it's where even if you read it, it says that any time a slave runs away, you are to return them to the plantation unless that slave wants to sign the same accommodations that were afforded to Kojo, which means you can become a maroon and have your territory as well. That's actually what it says. That's actually what it says. People kind of miss that. They miss that. They focus on, oh, you guys were supposed to return slaves. Well, fun fact, throughout the years, the British would pass new laws trying to pay the maroons more to catch runaways, because they would hold meetings like, how do we get the maroons to do what we want them to do? Because they weren't doing what they wanted them to do. They weren't acting as the protectorate as these dudes said that they would, because the maroons never really agreed to do that. Yes, there were sections of maroons who you could bribe with money to get to do your bidding because they were mercenaries. And there were maroons who did hunt slaves. Let's not deny that. I can name one, Charles Robinson. And under that treaty, quote unquote, it would be where they could get paid. They did get paid for doing that. But let's frame this. Do you believe that human beings can fly and turn invisible? If you don't, you need to shut the fuck up, because Charles Robinson could turn invisible. So if you believe that maroons caught slaves, then you believe that slaves can turn invisible, because the one that was caught, he could turn invisible. Um, he was terrorizing people, not just anybody, not just white people, black people included. White people wanted him gone, black people wanted him gone. They came after him first. And when the regular population, black, white, mulatto, whatever, could not get rid of Charles Robinson, they came to the Maroons and offered them money and gave them clothes. Of course, to the British, they gave them uniform. They're like, yo, here's some clothes for you. You don't have to wear these stuff. But to the British, it's like, yo, we're paying you, and here's some uniforms. You're working for us. Haha. They were trying to make them a police force. Now, there's some people who, over the years, they were like, well, that's what the treaty says. That's what they got duped into it. But no, dude, no. Additionally, the British would insult Kojo by repainting his image and repainting what happened. They would take, because again, when you read these journals, Terry Smoot, salute. I'm about to wrap it up in a sec. Was when you read the journal of the British, you're like, bro, it's one where they came to a throne and they were before a king. But what they wrote was that, oh, this dude was a humpback, a midget, He was kissing our feet because he was so grateful. And they drew him. They were like, "Oh, in order to talk to the savage beast, I exchanged hats with him. I took off my hat and I took his hat and I placed my hat. Nigga, fuck you! Don't touch my hat. Fuck no, that shit never happened. First off, Kojo wouldn't want to put on your fucking queer looking hat. Fuck you and your lights written hat. No, that wouldn't happen. And the only picture that we have of Kojo and what we recall of Kojo, he was like 6'1", brolic, great at acrobatics. Because the man walked across Jamaica regular. He was not a fat midget humpback. You know? So in that case, you got your ass whooped by a fat midget humpback. You got your ass whooped repeatedly. So yeah, with that in mind, they couldn't beat him. So they drew a truce and ran to the world and told them that it was a surrender. But to this day, the Maroon town still stand. And Kojo would go on to pass away in 1744. 1744. However, the British would go on to write fan fiction about him, right? That he would come into my bar, one gay dude, um, like wrote fan fiction. Um, the reason we believe it's fan fiction because he wrote some things that are verifiably inaccurate and are clearly exaggerated. But he was like a white dude who came to Jamaica, and he was just writing of his exploits with Amazon and jungle women, and he exaggerated a lot. But he wrote that Kojo came into his bar and drank and wore a medallion that the British gave him to show him as to be, a good soldier. And they would flip a lot of things that he did to show that, to say that he was serving the British. Like when he put down a rebellion, which was his own people rebelling against him, although those people were also enemies of the British. When he put them down swiftly, they took it as, look, see, he's serving our interests real quick. No, you just have a common interest. But he had died by 1744. And this dude in 1760 is writing about him, talking about, yeah, he drinks at my bar all the time. Yeah, he's a midget humpback. No. This dude had such a. Well, this dude used to, like, he owned slaves and he would literally shit in their mouth or make them shit in each other's mouths. He got off on stuff like that. He was a weirdo. Thistlewood, I think his name was. Fucking clown. Shit on your grave. Um, but yeah. Um, but Kojo would have 12 sons, the Rowe brothers. And let me see. Uh, he had Kojo Town and a Kampong Town, and I forgot where he was buried. But um, yeah, yeah, man. I don't know what to say. I feel like I need to leave it on a stronger note. But yeah, he wouldn't die in battle. I think when he went to visit not he was laying down and he passed away. He passed away. And um yeah, rest in peace, King Kojo, the mountain lion. And yeah, he gave us well, God gave us freedom. Just use them to fight that war, you know. So, so that's what we're doing January 6th. It's an Akampong tradition. It's a shame that Kojo's town is still not around, but Kampong Town celebrates it. And I want to bring back a martial arts culture to the Maroons. I want to bring martial arts culture because it's martial arts that made these towns. Throwing a spear, using a junga, an akrafina, which is just like a machine, um, stealth combat, um, actual hand-to-hand combat. You know, we're a martial people, so we deserve martial arts, and I want to build a boxing gym where I go over to a kampong, um, Curry Road. I think that's a great name. Um, but yeah, work on our own martial art style, one whose spirituality is based around Yah, Yehovah, Hallelujah, Yah, Hayah, Hayah, Hayah. That's actually Hayah. For Hay means Yah is God's name. Hayah. It's like praise Yah, Hayah, Hayah, Hayah. Hayah is praise Yah, Hayah, 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 Hayah. I think Hayah is like praise Yah, Hayah, Hoa. But yeah, um, yeah. So his legacy lives on. Legacy lives on. But in recent times, like as I said, a lot of the British lies were uncovered. Their attempt to make Maroons scapegoats and blame them and say that they killed a lot of runaway slaves and they caught them and whatnot. Again, some of that is true, but again, if you believe that, then you have to believe everything that was told about it. In every instance where a Maroon caught a slave, that slave was often a magician and could do like weird magical powers, and no one else could catch him. And they came to the Maroons as mercenaries and hired them, and not all of them, like one specific guy. Like, hey, you willing to do it? He's like, yeah, I know that motherfucker. We used to study sorcery together. Let me see if my magic's better than his. So it became like a competition for some Maroons. Um, and again, it was where 1/10 of the population uh, um, would have, what you call it, took payment to do that. Um, and this happened long after Kojo's death, long after his death. But this is when they came to them with like a revised treaty. And this was the same thing that the Ethiopians did to the Italians did to the Ethiopians. They came to them, they made a truce with them in one, say that yeah, these are the terms, then came back, wait a little while, then come back to a new group of people and say, yeah, these are terms you signed on. You know, um, yeah. Eventually, there was a second Maroon War. My great grand uncle, former chief man, he said that Kojo lived to like 1795, but I think he's bugging. I think his memory's like messed up because 1795, bruh, he's like 150, 140. Said that he was like he died just before the Second Maroon War. So it was the Second Maroon War in 1795, I think, or 1800. And again, yeah, the British got their asses kicked, and the Maroons weren't losing at all. They wanted truce. They wanted truce, and the British betrayed them and sold them, sent them off to Halifax and sent them off to Canada. But yeah, I'm wrapping this one up. I've been going on for a long time. Shabbat shalom. Peace.